Hi, this is Michael from the Diocese of Oakland, and I'm going to show you how to set up iPads using Apple Configurator and Meraki mobile device management. And yes, I am in my kitchen. This is where you're going to want to start at deploy.apple.com, and you're going to want to enroll in Apple's deployment programs. These allow you to do a lot of really useful things. The device enrollment program lets you do zero-touch kind of configuration so that all your devices automatically get enrolled in your mobile device management. The volume purchase program lets you buy app licenses in bulk, and this is super important because you get a 50% discount on any time you buy more than 20 apps. So that makes things really affordable to add apps to your iPads. So I'm not going to go over this in this video, but you should start here. We are not going to be using DEP in this particular deployment. Here's where we're going to start with our Meraki setup. So I'm just going to go to login. And if you don't have a Meraki account, you can go ahead and hit create an account. If you do have one, you can log in here. That's what I'm going to do. And when you start setting this up, it's going to ask you to create a new organization. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one of my existing organizations, and I will show you what that ends up looking like. Okay, so I've got my organization set up. I don't have a network, I don't have much of anything, but we're going to start putting it together. So I'm going to go to Organization, MDM, and then I'm asked to set up my MDM push certificate. So I'm going to click here to download that, which I already have, and I'm going to upload it to the Apple push certificate portal. So okay, I sign in and it's going to show me my portal. I'm going to create a new certificate. I'm already signed in to my Apple ID that I'm using for this. And I'm going to select and upload my certificate. And I'm going to download the corresponding certificate. And I'm going to tell it my Apple ID. Okay, I'm going to upload the corresponding certificate from Apple, save the page. Great, that's all set up. Okay, so now I'm going to go and create my network. Create a network, and it's going to be an MDM type network. I'm just going to name it for the school, and create. Alright, so now I've got my network, but I don't have any clients. So MDM settings again. Now I've got some more stuff here. I'm going to add a VPP account. I'm going to have to get my VPP service token. So in order to do that, I've got to go to the volume purchase program. What I've done is I've opened up my account summary within the VPP. I signed up for that using the Apple deployment programs. And I'm going to download that token for managed distribution. So there's my managed distribution token. I'm going to say anybody can do this. We won't be particular about it. We'll save it. And there's my VPP token. We're not going to use Apple Device Enrollment Program for now. Next thing I'm going to do, go to my profiles. We don't have any profiles, we're going to create one. This is where things start getting interesting. So I'm going to name this iPads. I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to require a password to remove it. And I'm going to apply this to all my devices for now. So that's saved. Now let's edit the settings associated with that profile. First thing we're going to do is turn on some restrictions. So I just snapped my fingers and did all my settings. This takes a little while, so I'm going to walk you through the things that I've turned off and left on. I typically leave the camera on and I leave screen capture on. Allow installing apps is an interesting one. I leave this on, but if you look down here, we turn off the App Store. This allows us as the administrators to send out apps while not allowing students or other teachers to download anything from the App Store. Moving on down, I turn off a lot of these customizations that are really for individual users. We have Siri off. Kids tend to like to play with that a bit. We can turn that on later if the teachers want it. This YouTube thing doesn't apply because there's no longer a built-in YouTube app, but I do turn off the autofill so that students' passwords and other information doesn't get stored by Safari. I turn off all of the iCloud features, and the reason I do that is because we don't want these apps these iPads backing up to a single iCloud account. They would all fill up that one account pretty quickly if we set one up. We're gonna leave most of this as it is already. Turn off explicit music and podcasts, or don't allow them. And then I set this to don't allow movies, don't allow TV shows, and allow all apps. Allow all apps is one of those interesting ones because we're going to control all the apps on these anyway, so we don't want to make it trouble for ourselves. iOS supervised restrictions. We'll come back to what supervised means. I'm going to allow iMessage, I'm going to turn off iMessage, app removal, bookstore, leave AirDrop on because it can be useful for sending files between devices. I'm turning off allowing modifying account settings. This will prevent a student from putting in their own Apple ID to download stuff onto the iPad. Turning off a few more things for individuals. Turning on Siri's profanity filter, even though we don't have Siri on yet. Maybe it'll come on later. We're not going to allow them to erase the iPad. We're not going to allow podcasts yet. We can always turn that on later. We're not going to allow them to configure restrictions. We don't need extra restrictions besides these right here. We've already talked about turning this off. These are all the things you can do for typing and spell check and correction, which will allow. I don't think anyone's going to use this with an Apple Watch. And these are really cool iOS 9 restrictions that prevent setting up passcodes, prevent changing the device name, prevent setting a different wallpaper. All really great stuff. And we're going to turn on the web content filter. It's just an automatic filter that's going to work on the iPads. If we need to, we can always whitelist and blacklist various things. The rest of this stuff is Windows Phone only. So I saved that. We can also add a passcode if we want. We can add Wi-Fi settings, which I will do. Okay, the rest of these we're just going to leave and we'll save them. Okay, our next step is to get ready to start adding our devices. So I'm under Systems Manager, MDM, and Add Devices. I'm going to scroll all the way down. Now there are manual ways you can do this, but we're going to do it using Apple Configurator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this enrollment URL for Apple Configurator 2.0 Plus. And that's going to end up in Configurator. So here we are in Apple Configurator, the magical tool that's going to allow us to configure our iPads rather rapidly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blueprint. And this will be St. Lawrence. And we're going to enter that blueprint. And this is going to let me do a number of things that are going to set up the iPad. So first I'm just going to make this a iPad target. So first I'm going to have to prepare my iPads. And you'll notice this is going to supervise them, enroll them in my MDM, and configure Setup Assistant. You'll recall that supervision, like these supervised restrictions, is going to give me extra control over what I can do with the iPad. So we're using manual. Automated enrollment is if you're using device enrollment program. I've got to choose a new server, which which means I'm going to set up my server. This is going to be my St. Lawrence. And now I'm going to paste in that enrollment URL that we had from Meraki before. It's going to download the certificates. Great. We're going to hit next. We're going to say we want to supervise them, but we also want to allow them to pair with other computers so that they can plug into lab computers or something else if you want to get images or video off of them. The organization is going to be a new one. So it's St. Lawrence. I'm not going to put in any additional information there. We'll generate a new supervision identity for this. We're not going to show any of these setup steps. So this is going to skip when we do our setup, the language, region, move from Android, Apple ID, all of this stuff is just going to get zoomed right over. It makes it way faster to do this setup process. I have to authenticate. So now I have all my setup steps in the blueprint. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some profiles. So I'm going to create a new profile. And all this is going to have is the initial Wi-Fi that it's going to get set up on. So I created my profile. I'm adding it in. And all this profile is going to do, this Wi-Fi profile, is it's going to allow the iPads to connect to the mobile device management and download all those settings and allow me to activate the iPad wirelessly without me ever having to type in use the ID, the SSID, or the passcode on the initial iPad setup. I'm not going to put any apps on this. I'm going to handle all of that on my mobile device management. So at this point I am done. And now it's time to plug in some devices. So I've plugged in my first two iPads. Unfortunately, I don't have a big USB hub where I would get, 4 or 5 or 6 of these in here or more. But I'm going to go 2 at a time. And I'm going to start by selecting all. I'm going to pick my blueprint. It's going to warn me about blueprinting. I hit apply. And we're just going to get started. So it's activating iOS. Great. Now the problem with this is you'll notice this is not iOS 9, so we're going to want to do that. And now next step is we're going to update them. This download process is a little challenging because it's going to download for every different type of iPad. So mine was already there, but if you have iPad 2s, if you have iPad 3s, if you have iPad minis, every different kind of iPad, it's going to download a separate version of iOS. Just know that that's going to happen. That way you're prepared when this takes a really long time. Okay, so now we're just going to sit here and we're going to wait for iOS to install. So here's my fully configured iPad. I'm gonna swipe. You'll notice it's already connected to my wireless network. Don't have to put in a code, hit next. St. Lawrence can automatically configure your iPad. Let's apply that configuration. Next, installing configuration. We're gonna agree to the Apple terms and conditions. And that is it. So you'll notice right now I got FaceTime and I have messages down here, a few other things. As soon as this is able to connect to Meraki, those are going to disappear because my settings are going to tell it to clear those out. sign into iTunes to allow ios.meraki.com to manage and install apps. We actually don't even need to do this. I'm going to cancel that. I do not want to sign into iTunes. Boom, there we go. We've connected to Meraki. We've applied our settings. So the next thing we're going to do is start sending out some apps. So check it out. Now I'm back in Meraki, and if I look at my client list, I can see that I have 2 iPads. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that I already put labels on these iPads to mark them. So the one I've got in my hand right now is iPad 5, and I'm going to look at the back of the iPad, and I'm going to see that it's got part of the serial number is M370. So we'll open that one up, and I'm going to rename this one iPad 5. This is going to make it a lot easier for me when I want to make sure that all of my apps have been pushed out, or when there's an issue with one of the iPads. Meraki has great tools here. I can see that my settings are up to date. I can see how many apps I still have to install. I can see all of the restrictions in effect on this iPad. Lots of information here. And here we go. This is telling me to log into your iTunes Store account. So I made a little mistake. I'm going to fix that up right now, and I'm going to show you how I do that. If I go to VPP, that's where my volume purchase plan items are. I have licenses for the Meraki Systems Manager app. I got these from the volume purchase program. And you can do this by simply searching for an app, clicking on it, choosing the number you want, and for free iOS apps you can choose as many as you want. Usually I'll do 100 at a time, and place your orders. This will automatically sync with the VPP in your dashboard. You can see that this is synced with Apple. So what I forgot to do though is back in my apps tab, I forgot to tell this to use a VPP device license. So I'm going to check that off. Okay, this is a very important option. This is going to allow us to send apps to the iPads without having to use an Apple ID at all. This is a huge time saver, and it's going to be completely without touching anything on the iPads. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to hit repush to all. And this is going to send that request again to the iPad. So we've added one app to our iPads, but what about the rest? Well, anytime you want something new, you can just go to the VPP portal, search for it, find it, say how many you want, and place your order. Within a few minutes, they're going to show up in the VPP tab in Meraki. If you're in a rush, you can click Force Sync Now, and it's going to pull all that newest data from Apple. So there's my tab. There's my available licenses. When I go to install it, now I have to add this app into my apps list. So I'm going to select New, iOS app, Star Renaissance, and I'm going to click Add. I'm going to use my VPP device license, check that, and I often also say to prevent backup to make sure that app data isn't syncing across devices. When I hit Save Changes, it's going to get pushed out to the apps. Also, because I have it installed on all devices, it's going to go out to every single device that I add as soon as I add it. I really recommend avoiding doing a lot of this before you have your devices set up, because every time you connect a new device, it's going to start trying to download. This will cause issues because all of those apps downloading can interfere with your initial configuration, where the iPad has to connect to the Meraki server just to download its profiles. So that's pretty much it for setting up my iPads. Now I've just got to do it 20 more times.